What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here today to finally dive into a little recap of the 2022 NBA market. And what we're going to do is I pulled a bunch of different cards. Some heavy hitters, some vintage, some key players. We got boatloads of charts and graphs. If you like charts and graphs, this is going to be the video for you. If you don't like charts and graphs, you're not going to like this video. Get that out of the way right now. We're going to be charts and graphs heavy, just basically run through a bunch of cards and take a look at how they performed over the last year. For the too long didn't read crowd, basically every card that I pulled almost went down anywhere from 30 to 50%. And I went from, beginning of January 2022 to beginning of January 2023. So basically over the last year, the NBA market as a whole essentially dropped about 40% at least for the cards that I pulled. Like I said, some are going to be 50, some are going to be 30, a couple are even 60, but generally speaking, most stuff was kind of right in line with that. So I guess the key question I have before we kind of dive into all this nonsense is, for little predictions down below, what do we think this same video would look like next year? Is it everything going to be down another 30%, 40%, 50%? Do we see things finally start to level off in 2023? Or is it too soon to say? A lot of people are fear-mongering. I shouldn't say fear-mongering because it's legitimate. Recession concerns, macroeconomic concerns. To me, I feel like we've already been in a recession. I don't really care what the textbook documents say in regards to what's an official recession and what's not. It's just all a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, we're starting to hear things about layoffs now at the beginning of the year. That was been kind of my concern is get through this first part of this year. Then I think we'll have a better sense of things. So without all knowing how the general macro world will affect things, because it will affect the sports card market for sure, what do I think this looks like next year? We'll use one key card that we'll talk about. I'm curious for thoughts and guesses on what we think it looks like at the end of next year. I do think at some point in time we do stop the continual dropping and things at least kind of chill for a while. I'm not saying things are going to shoot back up again, by no means, but at some point in time you're going to hit the bottom. It's hard to call the bottom, but at some point in time things are going to level out a little bit anyway. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. If you want to try out Market Movers, link is in the description down below. Starting off right off the gate, Fleer 86 Jordan. I went with PSA 9 here just because it transacts way more often. This card, beginning of the year, was going for just north of $24,000. Today, it sits at around $14,000, a 42% drop. Obviously, this card in the previous year was even higher. That's the other thing, too, to keep in mind. Everything we're going to look at today, outside of some ultra modern stuff, was higher in 2021. If I go back even further, it would be bigger drops. Doesn't even really go back to the pure peak of the market in most cases for a lot of these cards. So keep that in the back of your head as we kind of work through these. So Fleer Jordan, obviously iconic card, extremely easy to find one of these. Depending on the grade that you want could change things. At some point in time, this card is going to stop falling and level out, and we'll slowly start ticking back up again. I think PSA 10s, last I checked, are right around 200,000, slightly under 200,000. I thought I saw something maybe on P. Ryan Collections IG story the other day that none are in this recent golden auction, which is the first time in a while. So maybe the people that wanted to sell have stopped bringing in the market. That will start slowly moving that price up on those. But like I said, a lot of outside concerns in regards to cards in general. We will see what happens as the year starts. But that is the 86 Fleer Jordan. Next up, I wanted to mix in a little vintage here. So we got some older stuff and we got some true vintage here on the next one. This is the 1980 Topps Bird Irving Johnson rookie card. I went with PSA 9, 8, and 7 here to give us a little wide range. And they basically all went down about 40 to 50%, with the PSA 7 dropping the least. 22,000 on the PSA 9 to 12,000 today, 50% drop, 40% drop on the 8, and a 25% drop on the 7. My guess is on the 7, why it didn't drop as much is because that you're opening up a much larger buyer pool at $1,500. There's a lot of people that say, hey, I'd really like to have one of these cards. Once it gets to this price range, I'll go ahead and jump. There's a lot more people that are willing to spend $1,500 on a card versus $3,000, let alone $11,000 on a card. So sometimes the actual lower grades have a little bit of a higher floor because there's more demand sitting there waiting for that card to drop into the range for that buyer. And, you know, $1,500 is a range that a lot of people play in. You might not. I might not all the time, but that's a range that a lot of people transact in or can trade into that very easy at that price or sell things from their collection and get to a $1,500 number very easy to slide into that card. But once again, this isn't necessarily true vintage. We have a true vintage here in a second, but this was not immune. You know, the GOATs got hammered just as much as everything else. Here's kind of our true vintage for basketball, kind of the most iconic basketball vintage card, in my opinion, anyway. No expert here. That's just my take. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we have a PSA 8, 7, 6, and 5, and you could see across the board in the mid grades, the 7, the 6, and the 5, it went down 50% plus. On the high grade, it only dropped 24%. Now, I think the reverse thing is true here. This card in a high grade, there's just not a lot of them. The pop on a PSA 8 is 169, and it drops off like crazy when you go into PSA 9 territory in regards to population count. And you can see only 6 have sold this year. So this is kind of the reverse. There's not a lot of supply, and there is a lot of demand for this card at higher levels. So as you get into the more scarce side of things, it actually helps inflate this price, or not inflate, but keep the price higher. But other than that, other than the super low pop one, the other ones all came down 50% plus. You know, what was viewed as, oh, go run and buy vintage, this is the safest thing in the world, you know, go buy this stuff. It was not immune to these massive pricing drops. And once again, you know, you get into the lower grades, it opens it up to a lot more people. You know, a PSA 5 for around $1,000, a PSA 6 for around $2,300 is appealing for a lot of people that may want to enter the market into what is one of the more iconic vintage basketball cards out there. Doing something a little bit more modern, and this is the one that I was curious about that I teased at the beginning. LeBron Topps Chrome base PSA 10, and I pulled PSA 9. PSA 9, or I'm sorry, PSA 10 is down 45%. PSA 9 is down 32%. $6,200 on a PSA 10. This card at the peak of the market, I believe, got up to like 30,000, I think, maybe even 40,000, 20,000. I don't remember. I can look. I will look in a second. But at one point in time, this card was ridiculously priced. But even in the last year, after coming down from those all-time highs, just this year, it's still down 45%. Now, LeBron is obviously getting ready to break the all-time scoring record. I do personally think a lot of that is just baked into his prices already. We all know that it's coming as long as he stays remotely healthy this year. It's not a surprise. The biggest problem for him and his prices are the Lakers are an absolute disaster. Anthony Davis may miss the season. We still don't know what's going on with that foot injury. So no championship run. Even with Davis healthy, they weren't going to make a championship run. That team's a mess. And they're probably going to be a mess next year as well. And he's going to be 39 years old. For a 38, the guy just turned 38. He is still playing out of his mind. He's having an insane season statistic-wise. The guy is crazy. Obviously, I'm from Northeast Ohio. I'm a huge LeBron fan. I own quite a bit of LeBron cards. I actually currently do not own a LeBron rookie, actually. But I have a lot of his Topps Chrome Refractors, the Chalk Toss, some of the other ones. And his stuff continues to slide down. We see a little uptick here on this last one, but we've seen plenty of those over the last year. Intrigued to hear your prediction for what will this card be selling for 1 year from today when we get to beginning of 2024. And if I'm doing a similar style video to this, what does the PSA 10 Topps Chrome LeBron sell for? I'm going to go ahead and hit pull this up here. At its peak, I was right. Yeah, I got up over 40K. We had 38, 44K back in the beginning of 2021. So even from then to the beginning of 2022, it came down $30,000 from its peak and then dropped another $4,000 since then. For those curious, pre-pandemic, or right when things really started popping off, here's the beginning of March. This is March 3rd, March 5th, 2022. I'm sorry, 2020. This was before the NBA shut down. We knew that there was something going on overseas with a pandemic, but hadn't really hit the States yet. This card was selling for, peaked right before the market tanked, because there was, I think people forget that the market actually went up quite a bit prior to COVID actually starting. People like to blame COVID for the rise, but the card market was actually already on its way up, and then COVID just juiced it. The pandemic juiced the market. It took it to an insane level that it should have never gone to. An interesting what if would be, what would have happened if things just played out naturally? Where would we be today? But the interesting thing here is this card is currently now selling for less than what it was at the beginning of March of 2020. This card at beginning March 2020 was going for 7K in a PSA 10 and 2.2K in a PSA 9. We are well under both of those numbers. And even if you back up a little bit, if you go to February 2020, it was going for 4,600 and 1,500 pre the little run up that things had in March. So we still have a little bit to go to that. So do you think this card gets all the way back into that $4,000 range? Is it already overcorrected, or does it have more to go? This is one of the more intriguing ones on the list, just from a what will this card be priced at next year perspective. Speaking of LeBron, let's continue on him. I also pulled his refractor. PSA 10, PSA 9. PSA 10 is down 55%. Once again, just from the beginning of the year, this card got super crazy at the peak. And the PSA 9 is down 51%. $72,000 to $31,000. That's just in the last year. And then $18,000 to $9,000 on a PSA 9. Once again, just in the last year. I don't want to do this with every card, but we'll sneak a peek here and look back at some of the older ones. This card peaked at 320,000 and is currently at 31,000 today. Ouch. Ouch. Let's go back pre-pandemic, or as close as we could get. The 10 doesn't transact quite as often. Let's see right here. April 3rd went for 20,000. So this card is still above what it was going for in 2020. What do we got here? This is beginning of February 2020, so a month ago before the pandemic truly starts. And you can see underneath it, it's tough to see because of the way the graph is zoomed out. The 9 was actually rising up a little bit in between. There just wasn't very many sales. This was going for 15,000 in the PSA 10 pre-pandemic. So still not down to pandemic levels, but you can see where this is really kind of tailed off since 2021. But currently sitting at 31,000 with a last sale of December 24th, Christmas Eve. Next up, just a couple iconic LeBron cards. The Kobe guarding LeBron 2008 Topps Chrome, and the 2008 LeBron card which is the Chalk Toss. Two of his more iconic non-rookie cards, in my opinion. Those are both down. The Chalk Toss is down 50%. The Kobe Topps Chrome Refractor with LeBron guarding him is down 72%. This is one's actually on my radar this year to potentially pick up. I've always kind of wanted one of these. I've never been a big Kobe guy, but I understand the significance of the card, and I wouldn't mind having one, possibly in a PSA 9 would probably be what I'd be looking for on that one. Let's move into Ultra Modern. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And then we got some odds and ends. What I did here was take the top 5 selling rookies of each class and just rank it by price sold. It's interesting to kind of see how quickly it tails off and where the market kind of dictates where these guys are at. It was some of the names that popped on this list, and we're going to start with 2017. I didn't think I was going to be talking about Markelle Fultz today. But up at the top, we have Jason Tatum Silver Prism. This is one of the few cards that actually went up over the last year, though just barely. Up 8.5%. I did include the green here just for the hell of it. The green's a much talked about card on this channel. That is up 4.2%. I do own one of those in a BGS 9.5. Donovan Mitchell Silver down 40%. I am pulling this prior to his 71-point game. So this may have shifted a little bit, got a slight bump up because of that. But generally speaking, down 40%. De'Aaron Fox down 20%. And here we see the big drop off. Tatum's at 1,200 for a silver. Then it drops way down to Mitchell for 450. Then it drops way down to Fox at 175. King's actually having a really nice season. Then we go to Lauri Markkanen in the 4th slot. Never would have thought I was talking about him either. And one of the biggest risers of the season, up 90% on his silver PSA 10. Very low population on that. And then Markelle Fultz is another one I did not think I was going to be talking about today. But only $100 for his PSA 10, also down 42%. Moving over to 2018. More red. Not as bad, but still pretty ugly with just a very little bit of green. Luka obviously leads the way of the 2018 class. His stuff is down 30% in a silver prism. Once again, I know, a lot of people always ask, why do you use silver prism? It's not perfect, but whether we like it or not, the silver prism still gives you a very good macro level look at how a player's cards are performing. Is it going to be perfect? The silver goes up a certain percentage points. All the players' cards go up a certain percentage points. They're down a certain percentage. No. It's just rare enough that it holds pretty decent value, but also still transacts fairly regularly so you can get good trends out of it. I still think the Silver Prism is one of the better cards to use just to get a general feel for how a player's market is doing. It's not perfect, but that's the reason why I continue to use Silver Prism as kind of just a baseline when talking about these players. Same with like Topps Chrome Refractors in the baseball world. Back into the charts, Luka down 30%, having an outstanding season. His stuff has actually ticked up a little bit recently. He's having just an absolutely insane year. I do not own a Luka Silver Prism. I have Luka, but no Silver Prisms. The 2nd slot, formerly the Trae Young slot, he has dropped down. SGA has held that slot most of the year. He's having an insane season. We'll see if the Thunder shut him down again. I don't think they could do it. His stuff's at 425, down 35%. Trae Young, one of the biggest fallers of the entire year. Just an absolute disaster of a season so far for the Hawks. Narrative Street is against him. A lot of stuff going on. He has come a long way from that Knicks playoff series when everyone adored him. His Silver Prism to start the year was at $1,000. It is now down to $320, a 70% decrease. If you believe in Trae Young, I still have a little bit. I have the red mosaic and I have a PSA 10 Optic Hollow. I'm going to take a bath on that Optic Hollow whenever I go to sell it. I think I bought that for like 900 and some bucks. They're extremely low pop. I think the last sale on that is like 150. So I'm going to get wrecked whenever I go to sell that. And then I have the red mosaic. I'll get wrecked on that too. I think I paid 800 or 900 bucks for that. Maybe 750, 800. And the last sale on that is like 450, but it was April. One is not transacted in forever. At some point in time, his stuff's going to get too cheap. There's word on the street is that he may get dealt. We'll see what happens with that. That would obviously cause his stuff to spike a little bit. Not this year. I think that would be like an off-season trade. But the vibes in Atlanta, not great. His stuff's down 70%. My goodness. Anthony Simons up 8%. Once again, anyone that went up this year is a huge win. He's been a pretty good season for Portland. I've never been a huge believer in him. He's a good NBA player, but from a card perspective, I've just kind of always been on him. He's kind of is what he is. He's a good scoring guard. I don't know if that's enough to carry huge card prices for the way a lot of people like him. And then Jalen Brunson, only down 16%. His stuff actually did kind of shoot up a little bit this year. It was a little inflated from his Dallas run last year, dropped off, and then when he got traded to the Knicks, it popped back up again. He's also having a pretty solid season. He's been in and out of the lineup with some injuries here and there, but generally speaking, he's having a really good year. I think he just dropped 30-some the other night at time of recording. But also crazy that he's 5th on this list. Let's move into 2019, the Morant Zion class. At time that I pulled these, Zion had not gotten hurt yet. I pulled these a day or two ago. They've just been sitting in browser tabs, and I just haven't been able to get to it to record it. So Zion has pulled a hamstring. It sounds like he's going to be out a month or more. That is not reflected in this yet. We'll take a look at that in The weekly sports card market update coming up on Sunday. But Ja is the leader now. I expect that to hold. Those two kind of flip spots. But with Zion getting hurt again, I expect Ja to hold that slot. He's at $1,000, down 27%. Zion fell pretty hard, down 47%. Probably will fall a little bit more now with this hamstring. In the third slot, we have Jordan Poole. I'm a little surprised by this one. And I think this is all Warriors related. And maybe this is just my Cleveland bias coming out. I was really surprised that Jordan Poole sells for that much more than Darius Garland. Once again, if I'm being Cleveland biased here, so be it. But Poole is a sixth man. I mean, he's starting right now because Curry's hurt. But Poole's a sixth man. He's fine. Darius Garland's an all-star. Played out of his mind last year and is playing out of his mind again this year. He has been hurt a little bit this year. Maybe that's why. He's had some very fluke injuries. He got hit in the face and messed his eye up for the first week and a half of the season. And then he just recently sprained a thumb. But his stuff is down 55%, same as Poole's. I'm just surprised it's the $100 price gap between those two. I remember on a live stream, I think it was a year ago, saying I would rather have Darius Garland than Trae Young, and people being mad about it. People being very upset about that I said that it would be Garland over Trae Young. And right now, let's see, Darius Garland's at 178. Trae Young's at 319. As a Cavs fan, I can tell you right now, I would much rather have Darius Garland on the team than Trae Young. I would not trade Darius Garland for Trae Young straight up right now, and I wouldn't have done it last year either. And this is coming from someone that actually kind of liked Trae Young for a while. I had a decent amount of his cards. And then in the fifth slot, Tyler Hero, hobby darling during the pandemic, down to $100, a 65% decrease. Also actually having a pretty good year this year. I think he had some injuries where he was in and out of the lineup a little bit, but overall he's having a pretty decent year. I have him on a couple of fantasy teams. 2020 class. This is one that I notoriously am not a big fan of because I'm not a big fan of LaMelo Ball. That's my real gripe with this. And the fact that his stuff goes for $1,000 is a little crazy to me. The Hornets are bad. I don't think he's the Batman of a championship team. And I don't think you could be the Batman of not be the Batman of a championship team and your prices maintain that level. He could be a very good NBA player. I don't think he's the lead star on a championship basketball team. His current PSA 10 is sitting at $1,000. That's down 65%. Anthony Edwards had a disappointing start to the season. Looked like he came in out of shape, and also the Gobert trade kind of shook things up. He's been on the rebound lately. He's been playing pretty well since Towns actually went out of the lineup. I think he's actually gotten in shape as well. His stuff's down 40%. He is a freak. I once again, when this class first came out, I was kind of on Edwards. He really showed me something in the Grizzlies series last year. He needs to mature mentally, not physically. The guy's a beast. Biggest winner of the year, Tyrese Halliburton. His stuff's up 53%. Not necessarily from a percentage standpoint, but he is the breakout star of this NBA season, in my opinion. He looks absolutely fantastic. I've caught the Pacers a couple times when they've played the Cavs, and he just lights us up. Looks like one of the best young point guards in the league. And I wouldn't be surprised if the gap continues to narrow on Edwards and Halliburton running down LaMelo Ball as this season kind of progresses, especially Halliburton. I wouldn't be surprised if Halliburton actually jumped Edwards. Tyrese Maxey in the fourth slot at 250, followed by Desmond Bane at 230 in the fifth slot. Both very fun guys, young players, both had injury issues this year. Maxey's been out for about a month. I believe he's just coming back now off the bench. And I think Bane either just came back or is about to come back. He was having a hell of a season before he went out with injury. And the Grizzlies are an absolute ton of fun to watch. But his stuff is down 60%. Maxey's stuff down 50%. Next up is kind of the in-between guys. And I mean that as in they're not ultra-modern. They're not, LeBron's class. It's like the Yoke, the Joker, the Giannis's, and then we're going to look at a couple little other odds and ends of things here. Here we have Joker Silver Prism. It's at $2,500. It's up 2%, so it's basically stayed flat. He is having another MVP season. He very easily could be 3 MVPs in a row. Guy's ridiculous. Below that, we have Embiid Silver Prism down 48%. Also having a really good year. Once again, the scare with Embiid is always injuries. But the fact that his Silver Prism is half the price of Joker's when the population is half as much. Joker's PSA 10 pops 136. Embiid's is 78 because it's 2014 versus 2015. Kind of wild that the price discrepancy is that big. I get it. I definitely get it because of the injury concerns and the fact that Joker already has 2 MVPs and possibly a third. But head-to-head, those two guys are both monsters. Embiid puts up huge stats every single night. And then I have Joker's base Prism down 12%, and Embiid's base Prism down 11%. Interesting to see that Embiid's base is only down 10%, and the silver is down 48%. Thought that was kind of interesting. Next up, and we were almost done, a little Giannis action. Some Kobe, some Steph Curry, a little bit of mix of guys here. Giannis Silver Prism down 50%. Huge drop for that card when you consider what his last year has been like. NBA championship, Bucks come out playing really well. They've been struggling lately, but I think that they get it together. His base only down 25%. Kobe, the 96 paper tops, iconic card, obviously, down 47%. Steph Curry, tops base, I've had a PSA 10 and a PSA 9. PSA 10 down 44%. PSA 9 down 49%. Obviously, he's been hurt for most of the season, but he was having a really good year before he got hurt, and I believe he is due to come back, I think, any day, maybe even later, maybe even this weekend or early next week, I thought I saw. And then I have the Kobe Topps Chrome. That is down 40% as well, a little bit less than his paper version of the card. One last screen to look at, and then we will get you guys and girls out of here. KD Refractor Topps Chrome down 65% and 65% in his PSA 10 and PSA 9. Pour one out for my boy Splenda Sports, local guy here that I talk to frequently. He is a big KD guy. His stuff has just been getting wrecked. Now, his stuff could bounce back. He is having an insane season as well. The Nets, last I checked, are like 10-0 in their last 10. They smacked the Cavs around when they played him. He's playing at an extremely high level. He could get his name into the MVP conversation as well. If he could stay healthy, that's the trick. He's not really been able to stay completely healthy for a couple years now for a full season without missing a chunk of time. We'll see what happens as this year winds up. So, like I said, most of this stuff down anywhere from 40 to 50%. If you just kind of lump it all together, that's kind of where things come out. We'll see what next year looks like. I don't think it's this bad. I think it continues to trend down a little bit and then flattens out. But I don't think I'm sitting here next year saying, oh my God, LeBron's Topps Chrome base is down another 50%. Because that would be way lower at that point than where it was at in even early 2020, late 2019. And I just don't see it breaking through that unless things get really bad. Is that on the table? Yes, it could happen. I don't think it's going to. So I feel like at least the iconic GOAT cards like that, or at least starting to flirt with their floor, but time will tell. Could be wrong. As I always like to say, I'm just an idiot with a microphone that decides to upload this stuff to the internet. I'm no smarter than any of the rest of y'all. So that's all I have for you guys and girls. We will catch you on the next one. Probably a football and baseball version of this video. We will see. Catch you on that one. Peace.